There it is. This webinar is being recorded. And with that, I will introduce us to our guest. So joining us today from DCYF is Kelsey Boyce, the DCYF Child Care Grants Manager. And she's going to talk to us again about our topic today, the needs-based grant, as it pertains to this next fiscal year. So Kelsey, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Michael. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here on Zoom and to see all of you. And bear with me for just a second while I share my screen. All right, can everybody see the slide deck? Okay, great. Thank you so much again. And my name is Kelsey Boyce, and I'm the Child Care Grants Manager for the Early Learning Division at DCYF. And like Michael said, today I'm going to give an overview of the fiscal year 25, which starts in 2024, which is confusing, but the 24-25 needs-based grant, which we expect to open on Tuesday, July 2nd. So that's coming right up. And so the timing for this webinar is really convenient. I believe that in the chat, Leah is going to put a link to a form where you can put questions in as I give this presentation. So if you have questions that you would like me to address, either during the webinar or at the end or in writing later, I believe all questions should be going in through that form. And we'll make sure that your questions get addressed. So first, I'm going to go over just some general information about the needs-based grant, its purpose, why we do it, eligibility requirements of the grant, and how to apply. I also want to say that it's the 10-year anniversary of the needs-based grant this year. The very first needs-based grants went out in 2014, and since 2014, DCYF has awarded more than 9,000 needs-based grants to early achievers participants, totaling more than $8 million, which I'm really excited about. I've been with this grant for 8 of those 10 years, and it's really fun to see the ways that we've continued to expand access to the grant and to improve the application to reduce barriers and to make spending more flexible and to make it just easier in general. So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit and to talk about improvements that we're continuing to make to continue to reduce barriers where we can. So for the purpose, the needs-based grant is to support early learning programs that are participating in early achievers to assist with purchasing materials and equipment to improve program quality. And we can talk more about the specifics of what you can use the funds for later, but ultimately, it's for curriculum development, instructional materials, supplies, infant toddler items, environmental improvements, really anything, equipment that will improve program quality. An eligible program can receive up to one $1,000 needs-based grant each state fiscal year, and that state fiscal year is July 1 through June 30th. This year, the grant should be opening on July 2nd. So right as the fiscal year starts, we're getting geared up to open that grant. So for eligibility, early achievers participants, and that's anybody that's in early achievers and has an open license and good standing. So it doesn't matter if you're a quality level 2, 3, 4, 5, 3+, or if you're not rated yet, if you're participating and not yet rated. All early achievers participants are eligible for a grant if they meet one of the 2 eligibility criteria, and that's located in a school district that serves at least 20% low-income children based on data from OSPI, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, or are enrolled in a Tier 1 USDA food program. There may be questions that come up about when a provider is trying to access the needs-based grant application in WA Compass and it's not showing that they're eligible. The 2 reasons that it would show as not eligible for a provider is if they're showing as not enrolled in early achievers, which can happen sometimes, right? Maybe they enrolled that day and it takes a day for it to show up properly in the systems. or if they're located in an ineligible school district. We don't track Tier 1 USDA food program enrollment. So if a provider believes that they meet that eligibility requirement and reaches out to us, that's something that we can manually address in WaCompass so that the application shows up for them. So it's a matter of they would just need to show us that they're enrolled in that Tier 1 USDA food program. I'll also make a side note that if a provider has an open application that they've already started, but they haven't submitted yet, they won't be able to start a new application until they submit the first one. So if there's a application and the provider is telling you that it says it's new, the status is new, that's kind of the equivalent of like they printed out the application, but they didn't mail it in. So it's like they opened up an application and started filling it out, but they never actually hit submit and sent it to us. Then it's kind of a ghost application until they go back into that new one and submit it. That also might be a reason why somebody's not able to open a new application because they already have a new application that's opened. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So how to apply? Since 2018, the needs-based grant application has been in the WaCompass provider portal, and it continues to be there unless the provider's primary language is in Spanish or Somali, and they would prefer to submit an application in Spanish or Somali. In that case, there is a fillable PDF application that is in Spanish and a fillable PDF application that is in Somali located on our website. And I'll give you the link to that in the next slide, or Leah will give you the link to that in the next slide. So if a provider would like to submit the application in WaCompass, unfortunately, it's only available in English right now, but there's no writing involved. It's mostly it's all check boxes and selecting things. So I know that sometimes we do receive applications through WaCompass, even if a provider's primary language is not English. They're welcome to fill it out either way. And if they are doing that, the fillable PDF application is on our webpage, and there's instructions on how to fill that out and email it to our needs-based grant inbox. And that'll be listed on the webpage and also on the application to make it really clear. So that brings me to what's new for this 24-25 year. We have a brand new webpage. It's a dedicated webpage just for the needs-based grant. For many years, the needs-based grant information was kind of hidden in the Early Achievers web pages. Not hidden deliberately, but it was part of the Early Achievers program, and it lived there. But as DCYF has created more grants over the last few years, we wanted to align the way that all of the grants are presented. And so the other grants have a specific web page, and so we wanted a specific web page for this one. And I believe you just got the link to it. And I'll share my screen with that one too in a little bit, and we can look at what's on it. But on that web page, there's a new resource called the Needs-Based Grant Manual. And again, this is mirroring the other grants like the Early Childhood Equity Grant or the Complex Needs Fund. Those all have manuals that have all of the resources and information you need about the grant in one place. And so that's what we have now is a needs-based grant manual. It includes information about the grant. It includes frequently asked questions. I know one of those frequently asked questions is like, is this grant taxable? And the answer to that is yes, it's business income. And so it does count as income, and therefore there are taxes, but depending on how you spend the funds as part of your business, it might be deductible, it might not. I can't give tax advice, but I'm digressing. There's frequently asked questions. There's a step-by-step guide showing you how to apply, where to click in WaCompass, how the questions are formatted and how you can answer them and move through the application. There's also a receipt review guide, which takes you through the different processes that you might have to go through if you're selected for a receipt review to show the way that you spent your needs-based grant. So that's the manual. I'm excited about it. I'm glad to have that resource available. And then we made some tweaks to the actual application in WaCompass to make it a little less confusing and a little easier. And many of you tenured coaches probably recognize some of these things and go, oh, yes. So there was a question on the application of WA Compass that said, do you want to withdraw your application? And we had originally put that there back when there was some narrative spend plans and providers had to type out what exactly they were planning on spending the money on. And then sometimes they wanted to go back and change it, or they said, never mind, I want to just fill out a new application. And so we added this question to help them go back to their application and withdraw it. But it actually created more confusion than anything else, because most providers at this point check yes before they even submit their application. Yes, I want to withdraw my application, and then it really breaks the system. So we're removing that. And if for any reason a provider submits an application and then they don't want it to be submitted anymore, they want it to be removed, they can reach out to the grants email inbox and we will take care of that for them. There also used to be a question about if they wanted to edit their early achiever status. And this again caused a lot of confusion. It mostly was providers that were participating in level 2 activities, trying to change their status from participating to rated level 2, which I think was just a point of confusion, and it doesn't actually edit their status anywhere but on this grant application. So we removed that to just try to reduce any layers of confusion there. The last thing we removed from the application was the coach signature functionality. Coach signatures on needs-based grant applications used to be a requirement for licensed family homes. That requirement is no longer there. And the application no longer has these narrative spend plans that a coach would, want to read and sign off on. Now it's just raise your hand, check some boxes, and here's your grant for any of the spending categories that you want to use it in. So the coach signature functionality in WA Compass was never wonderful. I'm sure many of you remember some of the struggles in that. And so we've now removed it. So it should be a smoother process from starting your application to submitting it without errors or other issues. Okay, so what's not changing? What's the same here? The 2024-25 needs-based grant is still going to involve needing a valid and active statewide vendor payee number. The best way that I can talk about SWV numbers is comparing it to having a credit card saved in your Amazon account. So when you have, you buy something on Amazon and it's saved your credit card information, and so you can easily just make a purchase and it goes to your credit card. But when your credit card expires, it's still in your Amazon account, right? That old credit card number is still there, but it doesn't work. And that's what it's like in WA Compass. If a provider has an SWV number that doesn't work anymore, maybe it's because they haven't used it in 18 months, or maybe it's because they moved and their address changed and it didn't change on their SWV paperwork. There's a few other reasons that an SWV number cannot be functional anymore. But when that happens, it doesn't get removed from WA Compass. It's stored there just like a credit card number is in Amazon. And so when we review applications, we have to check to see, does this SWV number actually belong to the person on the account? Does the address match? Does the name match? Can we be reasonably sure that we're paying the right person? And if it doesn't match, that's when we have to not approve the grant application, and we have to go back and say, hey, you need a new SWV number, or you need to change your address so that it matches, or you need to change your business name so that it matches. And that's still, unfortunately, the way that it is for this coming fiscal year. We have a team who helps to check SWV numbers, and we have a webpage that talks about, common questions with SWV numbers, and that's linked to on the grant webpage. And that's the story with SWVs. The other thing that's not changing, or another thing that's not changing, is the first come, first serve processing. So applications are processed in the order that we receive them, and we do have a specific amount of funding available. We have $1.5 million. And as we have 1.5 million and the grants are $1,000 each, that means we can pay 1,500 providers to apply. And because this grant is so popular and it's easier than ever to submit an application, there's not spend plans anymore that have a lot of back and forth with, is this an allowable purchase or is this not? And there's not, coaches' signatures and other kinds of issues that might stop an application from being approved. It's easier than ever to submit. And so we get a lot of applications that come through really quickly. Last year, we opened the grant on July 5th and we ran out of money on August 21st, which is when we had to close it for the year. So that was just 7 weeks, or just a little under 7 weeks. So you can help by encouraging providers to ensure that they have an active SWV number and to apply for this grant as soon as they can in early July. I'm hopeful that, we'll eventually receive more money for this grant, but that's the money that we have allotted for it right now from the legislature. And so that's what we have. So this grant is a very quick process now with how many applications we receive. The terms and conditions are also not really changing. When a provider signs and submits their needs-based grant application, they're agreeing to 3 main things. They're agreeing that they'll spend the grant funds only on items within the allowable spending categories and within 1 year of receiving the money. They're agreeing that they're going to keep receipts from purchases and they're going to keep those receipts for 7 years, and that they might be asked to provide those receipts to DCYF. And then they're also agreeing that if they cannot provide the receipts and documentation when asked, they'll need to repay the grant funds. And that's a requirement that we have from the state auditor's office and just from, managing state funds in general. And then the last part is receipt review. That's not changing. We're still required to, have some oversight of the funding and to show that the funds are being spent on allowable costs. And so we do that by selecting a randomized 10% sample of grant recipients and asking them to verify their spending. Making sure that I covered everything. Oh, no, I didn't. So the one thing that will look different this year when we do a receipt review on last year's recipients is that last year we changed the spend plan so that it wasn't narrative based. It was just checkboxes of categories. And that means that we don't have to do amended spend plans anymore. And I sure believe that I'm not the only one who's really happy about that. So in previous years, it was, you had to agree that if you said on your application, I'm going to buy 3 tricycles, you had to then show that you bought 3 tricycles. And if you didn't use the money to buy 3 tricycles, then you had to explain why you didn't and then submit a new spend plan to show this is what I actually spent the money on so that we could stay in compliance with what the state auditor requires from us. But because we don't have anybody saying I'm buying 3 tricycles anymore, they're saying I'm going to, purchase something in active and gross motor materials or in all these other allowable categories. It means that the spending is a lot more flexible than it ever has been before. So now when we're checking receipts, we're not even checking to see if they spent the funds in the exact categories that they checked off. We're checking to see that they spent the funds in any of the allowable categories. So it's a lot more flexible. So I'm excited about that. I'm taking a quick peek at the chat because I think I'm missing some questions. Can providers purchase used items from garage sales or private sellers and have a handwritten receipt? I'm sorry, we cannot accept handwritten receipts for our receipt review. That is something that I wish we could accept, but it's not, it's unfortunately not. So it is $1,000 and Amazon receipts are fine. And really any kind of official receipt is fine, but like a handwritten one is not something that we're able to use. What time on July 2nd will the application open? It'll likely be in the morning around 8 or 10, and it's a little bit dependent on our IT team because our IT team has to open it in WA Compass. I've asked for it to be in the morning around 8. A non-itemized thrift store receipt, we need to see what was purchased. So if there's nothing on the receipt that shows what the provider bought, it's not a receipt that we'll be able to look at. I also see a question about how to know if a provider has an active SWV number. That is such a good question. There used to be a lookup available, a DES website where you could look up that information and make sure that like the number was active and matched. It no longer has information on licensed family homes because of Initiative 1501, which protects identity of caregivers such as licensed family homes. And so it's a matter of probably checking in with the Office of Financial Management, OFM. And I think there's information on how to look that up on the SWV webpage. And I will follow up after this meeting when we have written questions. I'll follow up with actual information on how to find that. Should FCC preempt and apply again for SWV if they aren't sure? No, they should reach out to the SWV inbox and check that way. And I'll make sure that that information is distributed out after this meeting. If a provider does not have an SWV or not an updated one, will they have the chance to complete the task and still receive the needs-based grant? That depends on whether they can do it before we run out of funds. If they can do it before we run out of funds, then because we're checking almost every day. We're going in every day and checking, has this SWV been updated? We'll keep a running list of applications and we check just to make sure that nothing's changed each day to see if we can bump them up and approve them. So yes, they have a chance to apply, but I can't promise, depending on timing, whether or not. So I would really advise that a provider check their SWV number and make sure that it's there and listed in WA Compass and then apply. But I recognize it doesn't always work that way. If a provider has to submit a change form for their SWV to add the second SWV on Monday, would they be able to apply on Tuesday? Possibly. It depends on how fast they get back confirmation that their SWV has properly changed. It can take a few days sometimes, and I know that there's the July 4th holiday, and that might put a little bit of a delay in the timelines. But unfortunately, DCYF doesn't control the SWV numbers. We can't create SWV numbers or change them. It's something that's managed by a completely different state agency. And so we do our best to connect with them and get things through as best and quickly as we can, but it's not actually something that we have any power over. And Maricela, that's that webpage works sometimes, but they don't keep it updated for licensed family homes because of the protections for licensed family homes. So you might have some luck with that, but I don't actually think that it's accurate for licensed family homes or updated.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I found several of the providers that I've helped on there with that.
I used to spend all day long on that webpage. It was a really helpful tool, and I would just
okay
be doing my
so we
darndest
could so then we could always just have them call to find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, if they apply and we go in and find out that it's not, we email them like as fast as we can. We say, hey, you've got your SWV needs to have an address change. Please fill out this form. Like it's not just going into the void to sit there. If there's a problem with the SWV, my team is checking those and emailing.
Okay.
But sometimes it takes a little bit when we get 500 applications on the first day.
Yeah.
And there's like 2 of us trying to go through each one and check the SWVs over different systems. It can take a little bit of time.
Do you know that when it gets entered in merit, if that check is already done for you? Because
Well,
sometimes the accounts, the numbers are already in their merit accounts, and that's why it automatically populates when they submit the
yes.
application.
So
So
merit informs WA Compass. So if there's a number listed in their facility details in
yeah,
merit, it is populated in WA Compass, but it's like Amazon. So if the number is stored there, but something can change at any time, and that
and
number
it's
can
not going
be,
to, okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
that's what we have to check.
So you guys have to do a check anyway.
Yeah, we
Got
do.
it. Okay, thank you.
Of course. If they have an SWV, but they had issues with the direct deposit, can they still get the needs-based grant? I think I'll need a little more detail on what issues you mean by that.
Hi, Kelsey, it's Mandy. So I've had a few providers who like they've gotten their statewide vendor number, but then like when they try to set up the direct deposit for it, they've had like some have been issues like not having the right EIN number, the right social security number, or something like that. So like if they're not able to get their direct deposit set up before the needs-based grant goes out, are they still able to get it and just get like a check instead of direct deposit?
Yeah, SWV numbers can be for direct deposit, or they can be for the financial term is inserted warrant, which just means a mailed check. I don't know why they call it an inserted warrant. But yes, if they don't have direct deposit set up, it will be mailed to them as a check. And that's one of the reasons that we're so particular about making sure the addresses match, because sometimes we get providers that have an address listed that is not going to get the check to them, whether that's an address that doesn't exist anymore, or whether it's like they have a PO box in one place, but a physical address in the other place that doesn't get mail. There's lots of reasons why a check might not get to them if we don't make sure that the SWV address matches their information in the licensing system. And I realized that I'm on this slide, but my next slide here is actually questions. So we timed this really well because that's what we're doing right now. I saw a previous question in the chat about the needs-based grant application being in Spanish or Somali to reduce confusion and streamline providers applying whose first language is not English. What can I share about this? I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand your question. The needs-based grant application is in English in WA Compass, and it's available in both Spanish and Somali as a fillable PDF application. Is there?
Yeah, I don't recall who asked the question, and the question is not in the chat anymore, so
I'm
I would
scrolling
invite.
up to see if I can find anything here.
I don't think it's there. Our team has been searching for it.
Okay.
Maybe the person submitted it through the form though, that could be too.
Hmm.
But if you are wondering about that and you asked that question, feel free to unmute if you'd like to.
I believe it was Allison. If you're still here, Allison.
I mean, I answered it myself when I went to look
Oh.
and saw that it was there, so there was no need, and I deleted it because I felt like an idiot. So great, thank you.
Oh, not an idiot at all. We just wanted to make sure it didn't get glossed over. Sometimes we miss them, and so we wanted to make sure it got asked. Glad you found the answer.
Yeah. Mandy, thank you so much for putting that question in the chat. The operating guidelines show that providers have to have completed program profile to get needs-based grant. Is that still a requirement? No, it's never been a requirement. That should not be in the operating guidelines. I believe that should be removed, and I will work with whoever it is on the QRIS team here to try to get that removed promptly. As the childcare grants manager, I'm not actually a member of the early achievers team, and there's sometimes, cross-wired, wires get crossed sometimes. So I thought that I had requested that to be removed in the past. It sounds like it hasn't been removed, so I will definitely reach out and try. I think there's been some staff changes too, right? So I'll reach out and try to get that fixed so that it doesn't say that anymore, because that's not true. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
So
So do they just have to be a participant of Early Achievers, right?
They have to be participating in Early Achievers at any level or not rated at all. And they have to be either in a low income school district or a school district that serves at least 20% low income children, or enrolled in the Tier 1 USDA food program.
Okay.
And that's most providers. You know, there's a handful that are like in the Issaquah School District or the Bellevue School District that don't quite meet those requirements, but they can if they're enrolled in the USDA food program. At one time, coaches were able to view the application on Salesforce. How or where can a coach view a provider's needs-based grant application, not having to go into Provider Well Compass account? I think it would be a matter of talking with your provider and having them show it to you or share their screen. They can download PDFs of their application, and it really, all it has is some basic information and some checkboxes. There's not really any content that we're requiring providers to put into this application. It's just kind of like, you know, what languages do you offer instruction in, and what categories check the boxes that you want to spend the money in. It's pretty basic level. But if there's a particular question you have about someone's application, you can reach out to the needs-based grant inbox and we can help you troubleshoot for sure. How do you find out about the school district's percentage? I believe on our web page, the needs-based grant website, and maybe I should share my screen and show that now. Hang on just a second and I'll make that happen. Stop share. Share. Here we go. Can everybody see the needs-based grant webpage? Good. So here we have, I'm hovering over it right now. Maybe it's too small. Maybe I should. So to determine if a school district is eligible, we have a link right here that takes you to the report on the OSPI website. And that's where you can look up school district percentages. And a provider can tell if they're eligible too by whether or not the application shows up for them when they try to apply. And if for some reason it's not showing up, they can always reach out to us and we will let them know whether, like, why they're not eligible, or if, oh no, you are eligible and there's been a mistake in our system, and we'll go and fix it. But this is a good chance too to just kind of, every time I share my screen, the chat goes away and then I can't see it. So sorry, I'm bringing it back up right now. Yes, somebody else just put the OSPI webpage in. So thank you, Navi B. I also want to highlight some of the other information we have here. So we have information about the SWV process linked in the webpage, and that'll take you to the SWV webpage, which has forms and frequently asked questions about SWVs and contact information for that team. Here's the links to the manual in English, Spanish, and Somali. And here's a list of what the grant funds can be used for and what they can't be used for. So I think most of you are probably pretty familiar with the various spend categories, and I won't read them through that much, but what the funds can't be used for is things like salary increases or bonuses, religious activities, including worship and instruction, gift cards, or capital improvement like major construction or renovation. Although I don't think there's too much major construction you can do with $1,000, but I've been wrong before. The only way to know if the SWV number is current is to call or email or wait for the needs-based grant email to say that they need a renewed SWV. Kathleen, I think that's pretty accurate. Providers should have a general idea if their SWV number is accurate. Like, have they moved recently? Has it been a couple of years since they've received any payments? If they're actively getting a needs-based grant every year and like their information hasn't changed, their number should be active. The biggest reasons that the number isn't active is if it's been more than 18 months since it's been used, like if they haven't received any payments from the state in that long, or if their information changed. Like sometimes they changed from a social security number to a tax ID number, or if they moved to a different location. Those are the big reasons. I have a provider who owns a center and a family home. Do you know if she needs to have 2 different SWV numbers? That's a great question, Alma. And yes, each licensed site needs its own SWV number. Sometimes, if those SWV numbers are related to the same like EIN or like employer ID number, if it's related to, if it's going to the same entity, they can do that with suffixes. And what that means is you might have a like SWV 1234567-00, and then the FCC might be SWV 1234567-01. And that's a way that like a YMCA that has 10 different sites can have the same SWV number, but each number has a different suffix. So you have -01, -02, -03. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and pay attention to all of you. Hey, I can see your faces now. So I am happy to remain and answer any questions that I haven't answered. I don't know if there have been other questions going in through the form that you'd like me to. I'm also not sure when this webinar ends, and so if you're all like, no, it's time to be done, then I can be done too.
I have a question, and I
Yeah.
was typing it in the chat, but I'll just go ahead and ask it. I'm curious to know whether or not DCYF is going to look into the access of the actual application for Spanish and Somali speaking providers, meaning that I know that you said earlier that if Spanish speaking providers or Somali speaking providers need the application in a different language, they could get that off the website in their, respective languages. But I guess I'm thinking about equity in access. Wouldn't that put them kind of, or delay their processing of application because of the extra steps, whereas those applications that are being directly entered into WaCompass?
Thank you, Valerie, for bringing that up. I will say we've been asking for that functionality for a while, and it's been a matter of resources and functionality. The way that the needs-based grant application is in WaCompass, we just don't have that functionality right now, which is why our workaround is these PDF applications. But what I will say is that my team is receiving those PDF emailed applications and directly entering them into WaCompass on behalf of the provider. And we're doing that in real time. And I don't want to imply that that is any way like a good thing or like a better thing than having direct access to WaCompass. But as a workaround, filling out the PDF and hitting send on an email isn't taking any more time than it is to log into WaCompass and fill out the thing and hit submit that way. It's just a different way of submitting it, and then we're immediately putting it in. The applications, are they going to the same email as the general questions? Yes, but we can see when they have attachments and we go to them first.
I'm sorry, if your team is entering the application on behalf of the providers that submit the fillable form via email, isn't that a little bit more time than somebody directly apply or submitting through?
They get to DCYF at the same time, and we have timestamps. So we're entering it into WaCompass so that all of the applications are in one system, but we're entering them with the timestamp that we received them so that they are processed as soon as we receive, like they don't lose their spot in line. If that makes sense. And again, this is something that I very much want us to have the capability for in WaCompass, and it's something that we hope to have in the future and that we have requested. and it's just not something that I have the resources to fix in Wacampus right now.
I'm sorry, you might have mentioned this before, but does the provider that need the PDF version, do they have to make a request for that?
No, the application is available on our website.
So I'm not sure if they already asked this question, but will there be an email sent to all the providers in the state letting them know about the grant?
There was an email sent to all early achievers participants in the state on, what day is it today? On Tuesday, letting them know that the grant was opening on the 2nd.
Thank you.
Nadir, I see printers aren't always accessible. This is not an application that needs to be printed out. It's a fillable PDF, so you can click on the PDF, type in your answers, and then email it. There's no need for a printer. You can fill it on a phone even. I tend to be a nervous talker to fill the space, and so I'm trying to practice, stepping back and giving time for you to process and answer or ask any further questions that you have.
I'm doing the same here too, Kelsey. If we don't have any other questions, we've got a couple more minutes here with you. I do have a list of questions from the form that we'll send to you. So if you're, a couple things really quick for the participants here. If your question was not answered on the forum, I think we have time for maybe one quick question. We'll send these to Kelsey and she will answer those and get those back to us, and then we'll send those out as well. And just looking at time, let's see, I'll give you one question here before you go, Kelsey. What accounting/fiscal organization supports can be provided along with training information on how to properly spend funds?
That's a great question. I would say that the manual that we have available on our webpage is a really, really good resource. There's, I wonder if I should share my screen to show it, but
yeah, if you're able to, yeah.
Yeah, hang on just a second. I am so slow when it comes to screen sharing, so bear with me for just a second. Screen, this one. Okay, so I'm going to open up the manual so you can see what it looks like. And apologies for this. Well, maybe I'm not going to scroll. Maybe I'm going to use the contents. So we have some post-award information about, if you're awarded a needs-based grant, you need to be prepared to submit your receipts. And there's some information on how to track receipts. And it, includes things like, take pictures of your receipts with your smartphone, or, avoid cash payments. It's hard to track that, and it's hard to reconcile with receipts. Ask for help if you need to. We give our contact information for the needs-based grant inbox, where we work with providers on that. We have information on the Child Care Aware of Washington regional offices too. So that's some of the information on tracking receipts. But we also have, and I am going to scroll now, a receipt review guide. And so the receipt review guide has information on what to expect if you're selected for receipt review. It has some tips on how to prepare for it. It tells you the kinds of receipts that we'll take, and it has examples on how to fill out the forms. For example, Costco, some cleaning supplies and the amount that they cost. So it has some kind of step-by-step information, and it says, there are 2 ways you can list the items, and it goes through that. So there's a lot of that kind of information on this manual. Was that the full question, Michael? Did I respond to that, or was there other pieces of that question that I'm missing?
No, yeah, that was the full question I have in front of me. If the person that submit that has any further clarification, I'll open the floor up here. But yeah, that was a full extent of the question.
Okay. I'll also say, like, on the receipt review side, like, I've got a team who really will work with a provider to get these informations. They will get on the phone, and if a provider requests a phone call or a little bit more help in filling out the forms and submitting their receipts, we're there every step of the way. We don't want this process to be scary. We don't want this process to be full of barriers for no reasons. But we do have to have some accountability for the spending of the funds, because that's what we have to do as stewards of state funds, right? So, and we want providers to be successful at this. And I'm really hopeful that with these broader spending categories, as opposed to very specific spending plans, it will provide that extra flexibility and make receipt review even easier. And of course, we rely on coaches for your help with that. Sometimes, if we have a provider who needs a little extra assistance, and maybe they have a closer relationship with their coach, and sometimes we reach out to the regional coordinators and we say, hey, this provider is struggling right now and could use a little extra support. Like, can you help us explain this? And so sometimes we do get in touch with coaches for that additional warm touch. Elena S., can we tell providers that they cannot use it on yard sales? Please tell providers not to use it on yard sales if they can't get an official receipt.
Kelsey, may I ask you a follow-up question on that question?
Of course.
If the provider goes to a yard sale or garage sale, and the seller provides some kind of receipt, can they use that?
Not if it's a handwritten receipt.
So no, for example, those kind of forms that they can get in the Staples, a receipt like that, that doesn't work?
I don't believe so. And I can follow up with my receipt review team to really make sure of that. But my understanding is that we really need to see a printed receipt from a business.
What information do you, yeah, that would be very good to know. What kind of information are you looking in the printed receipt?
Yes, for a printed receipt, we're looking for the item or items that was purchased, the date that the items were purchased, the method of payment, or like proof that the items were paid for. Because sometimes it'll be somebody came and fixed a fence. And so then we'll be looking for a paid invoice, right? So something with the description of the work that was done, the date that it was done, and then proof that it was actually paid.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Patty, and thank you so much again, Kelsey, and lots of thanks in the chat for your time today. So be looking for the follow-up to some of those other questions that Kelsey will get to us. Your questions have been received. I think Leah dropped in the chat just a moment ago the form. So if you haven't got a chance to ask a question, please do so in that form link below. And with that concludes our webinar today. So my apologies for not mentioning at the beginning of the webinar, but we're going to be moving our topic of our end of year celebration conversation that was planned for today. We're going to move that to next month. And so today we give you the gift of time. Please use the QR code there for the survey and give feedback on the webinar, and have a great weekend and a safe holiday. And we'll see you around in the next one. Thank you so much. Bye.